During the final days of the Terran Unification Wars, the Emperor of Mankind would begin the undertaking of his Primarch project, creating 20 generals made from his own genetic material to lead his armies in the forthcoming Great Crusade. The incubation pods containing these nascent Primarchs, however, would be scattered throughout the galaxy, thanks in part to the actions of the Chaos Gods. The Emperor would use the data collected from this project, as well as genetic samples taken from his gene sons, in order to create a new breed of genetically augmented warrior. This would lead to the creation of the 20 Space Marine Legions of the first founding. Over time, all of the Primarchs would be reunited with their father, and gifted command of the legions of warriors that were derived from their genetic template. Each Primarch would also achieve great accomplishments throughout the course of their lives, often on multiple occasions. Rabute Guilliman of the Ultramarines Legion would unite several planetary systems into a great empire long before his reunion with the Emperor. Fulgrim of the Emperor's Children would bring an entire world into compliance using less than a dozen warriors. These two such examples are but a fragment of all the great endeavours undertaken by the Primarchs. But what about the accomplishments achieved by the Lost and the Purged? The Lost and the Purged are informal terms used to describe the Primarchs of the 2nd and 11th Legions. These two particular Primarchs had their names, including those of their legions, and any records pertaining to them erased from the annals of Imperial history, prior to the events of the Horus Heresy for some unknown transgression. Now, before we continue, we will not be attempting to cover what fate befell the Lost Primarchs, but rather attempt to catalogue what deeds the pair may have accomplished in life. The qualities and traits of the 11th Primarch are completely unknown. However, we do have some information in regards to the 2nd Primarch and his personality. The novel Fulgrim the Palatine Phoenix, which takes place shortly after Fulgrim's reunion with the Emperor of Mankind, details the following information about the Lord of the 2nd Legion, after Fulgrim bragged that he would be able to bring an entire world into compliance by himself, and would be ridiculed by his brothers as a result.
Fulgrim bowed his head, suddenly weary. 7 voices, raised in doubt. 7 brothers, arrayed against the 8th. Even the normally contemplative master of the 2nd had broken his silence to accuse Fulgrim of hubris. He snorted. There was an old Terran saying about pots and kettles. He'd refrained from sharing it at the time. His quiet brother had no sense of humour that he was aware of. Perhaps that was why he spoke so little.
Within the novel Clone Lord, Flavius Alkenex, prefector of the Emperor's Children Legion's Phoenix Guard, leads Fabius Bile and the forces under the Apothecary's command deep within the Ultima Segmentum in order to recover a lost cache of pure and untainted Emperor's Children gene seed from the time of the Great Crusade. When they came across the Imgur Monolith, a vast and mysterious structure that would later be revealed to be of Necrontyr origin, Alkenex recalls a particular story told to him by Fulgrim that details the actions of one of the Lost Primarchs, who had led a voyage to this particular region at some unknown point in time during the Great Crusade.
Fulgrim made mention of it once. Apparently one of the 2 Forgotten Ones was said to have led an expedition to its Black Heart in the early centuries of the Great Crusade. Though why he was out this far, and what he might have found, was never recorded, probably for the best. The galaxy has devils enough without letting out whatever resides there.
Initially, given the language stating that this particular act was undertaken early in the Great Crusade. This would primarily suggest that this was an action that was undertaken by the 2nd Legion, given how the 2nd Legion's Primarch was the 3rd Primarch to be rediscovered by Imperial forces, and that the 11th Primarch was the penultimate one to be found. There is also additional evidence to suggest that both the 2nd and 11th Legions took part within the xenocidal campaigns against a race known as the Rangdan. The Rangdan xenocides were officially undertaken by the Dark Angels and Space Wolves legions approximately around 860 M30, and these campaigns were some of the bloodiest and most devastating series of wars during the entirety of the Great Crusade. This was due to the Rangdan race not only being extremely aggressive, but also extraordinarily advanced at a technological level. The conflict itself would last over the course of several decades, reaping a costly toll upon the Imperium as the Xenos race scoured many worlds entirely of human life. The website The Regimental Standard hints towards the Lost Legions having taken part during this conflict with the Dressing a Lasgun Wound article. This specific article is crudely superimposed over an old field guide intended for members of the Solar Auxilia, the elite shock troopers of the Imperial Army.
Unfortunately, due to a printing error, the section of your uplifting primer dealing with field dressing a lasgun wound has accidentally been replaced with a concise history of the Rangdan genocides and a complete guide to fighting the sinister Xenos. This is a feature that would, in its own way, be invaluable had the Rangdan not been exterminated 10 millennia ago, and had the guide not been based on embellished accounts that include tactics, weaponry, regiments and Space Marine legions that do not, as far as we can tell, appear to exist.
The details that can be made out from the field manual before it is cut off by the overlaid editorial is that the Solar Auxilia were to be reinforced by both the 2nd and 11th Legions for the duration of the campaign. This does seem to tie into information detailed within Horus Heresy Book 7, Inferno. When chronicling the aftermath of the conflict, it states the following:
Whole expeditionary fleets went to their deaths without a single survivor. Worlds were laid waste. Dozens of Titan legions obliterated, and by the end, entire Space Marine legions, redacted section, lost to the Imperium.
Given that some of the data regarding the losses incurred by the Legione Astartes is redacted, with many of the records regarding the details of the conflict being described as being kept under lock and key, this would seem to suggest that, in conjunction with the information from the Regimental Standard, that the Rangdan Xenocides would be the last campaign the Lost Primarchs themselves would undertake prior to their erasure from Imperial records. But this hypothesis is, in itself, not without flaws. The bottom of the field guide, which is still visible, reads not only the mandatory "Hail the Emperor", but it also reads "Hail the War Master". The War Master rank itself didn't exist within the Imperium until after the Ulanor Crusade, which pitted the Emperor's forces against the vast hordes of the Orc warlord Urlak Urg. The culmination of this crusade saw the Emperor bestow the title of War Master upon Horus Lupercal of the Lunar Wolves Legion, giving the Primarch authority to lead the crusade in his stead, while the Emperor returned to Terra to undertake his secret Webway project. The culmination of the Ulanor Crusade took place in 000 M31, after the Emperor's reunion with Alfarius, who would take command of the Alpha Legion around 981 M30. As we can see, both of these events occurred after the 2nd and 11th Primarchs were erased from Imperial records. This would imply that the viability of the information presented within the Regimental Standard is somewhat questionable, unless for whatever reason, the Emperor also held the rank of War Master prior to the triumph of Ullanor. But admittedly, that possibility is extremely unlikely in the grand scheme of things. Given the sardonic and oftentimes satirical nature of the Regimental Standard website as a whole, it could simply mean that this is meant as nothing more than a tongue-in-cheek reference or Easter egg, meaning that its canonicity is debatable at best. Are there any other documented feats that we may have missed? If you know of any, then leave a comment below, and thanks for watching.